Well, hello, guys. We are so excited to be back here with you today. And I'm super excited because my spiritual mom and friend, Deb, is here. This is Dr. Deb. She is a world-renowned psychologist. I love her so much. And today we're going to talk about trauma and how it affects how you live every single day. It affects every aspect of your life. And she has been so instrumental in helping me see that. And I'm going to say millions of others, because I think there's been millions of people impacted by what she says and does and writes. So welcome, Deb, and you can talk about trauma.
Oh, all right. Well, that's one of my favorite topics of all time, as you know. And, because all of us, trauma has touched almost every single person on the planet. There's not anybody that has not experienced trauma, dealt with family members that are PTSD or complex trauma from childhood. It affects every single aspect of our life. It affects our relationships. It affects how we see ourselves, our personal identity. It affects how we raise our children. It affects uh, our income. A lot of people don't know that. But if you have unhealed trauma, you're not going to take chances. You're not going to seek that job because you're not going to feel worthy. You're not going to feel good enough. And they'll probably turn me down or I'll probably be rejected. And one study out there said in a lifetime, people with unhealed trauma will lose over $1 million in income.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna say, isn't there a study that says that like you lose $1 million because of your trauma? And
right. Good reason to get healed from it, right?
it's a huge reason. You can only lead at the level to which you're healed. I say that like all the time, right? So when you're trying to lead a business or you're trying to lead a family or you're trying to lead a church or a community initiative, whatever it is, you can only lead to the level with which you're healed. So I think that matters so
Oh,
much.
oh, definitely. I mean, it's what happens is you end up bleeding on everybody that never cut you. And
And
so
then I've done it a few
I've been
times.
guilty of that as well. So,
Yeah. You know what? And I've not even let Deb introduce herself yet. So I'm going to let her do that really quickly. Deb, if you will tell us a little bit about your background, because the depths of her knowledge and wisdom are like, they go so deep. So I want her to tell you that because I'll mess it all up. So I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about that.
well, you flatter me and honor me. I thank you so very much. I've been a therapist for over 30 years. California, I had a practice where I worked with LA County Probation Department providing psychological services to their population, especially in the juvenile justice system, with kids that are gang intervention, families that had been generational in gangs and trauma was like their middle name. And so I've done that. But I also have worked with a lot of women that have been through emotional abuse, physical abuse. The list can go on and on. And so I've done that. I've written two books now. I'm a motivational speaker, conference speaker. And so I love, love, love to see the light bulbs come on in people's lives and just see, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Oh, I am doing that. Oh, that is keeping me stuck. Because so many of us, once we've experienced trauma, we get stuck. And it's like, why am I still here? And then we go into that cycle of shame, like, what is wrong with me? I have faith. What's wrong with my faith? Why aren't I getting better? And you start asking yourself and shaming yourself with all these questions that you don't have answers to. And that's why it's so important to really dig in. And trauma healing is hard work.
It is. So let's dig in there for a second. Why do we get stuck? Why do women get stuck when they're in life and they think, "Oh, well, I've forgiven or I've done this freedom work or I've done XYZ." Why are they still stuck? What's happening in those places?
What is normally happening is what they're saying to themselves,
mm,
self-talk. I'm never going to be good enough. I knew something bad was going to happen. I'm never I'm stupid. I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? Things you would never call your friend and say, "Hey, you're so stupid. Why did you do that?"
I
You
don't
would
know.
never
I've said
say
that
that.
to you a couple times now.
You
I was
wouldn't
gonna
have
say,
very
depends
many
on your friend, Deb. I mean,
you wouldn't have very many friends left if you picked up the phone every time and said those things. But we feel free to say it to ourselves.
yeah.
And so what that does is takes us back to this neural loop in our brain and we're replaying the trauma over and over again. What was it that made me feel not good enough? Where did the original shame, the original pain come from? Because our brain doesn't know the difference between what happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and what's happening right now. It gets in that neural loop of it is happening right now. We're triggered and it feels in our bodies like it's happening right at this very moment. And so there's a key there that we have to learn how to stop. I like to say freeze for 5 minutes. Identify what you're feeling, where it's coming from, because you have to name it to tame it. And
Mm,
once you name what that feeling is, and once you name, oh, I recognize this is fear that I'm not going to be good enough, that I'm not going to measure up. I recognize you, fear. And God did not give me a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. So I reject your reaction right now, and I'm replacing it with perfect love that only comes from the Father, that only is heavenly love, glorious love that casts out fear. So you're cast out because I'm going to bask right now in the love. And when you do that, you shift from that drama queen part of your brain, the amygdala. It makes a shift to the CEO of your brain, where you can reason and you can calmly think things through, and will give you solutions and answers. And so it's a mind shift.
Well, I want to say two things here. One is I want to come back to take every thought captive. Carrie and I have we already talked about that a little bit, right? Taking every thought captive. But there's also science behind that, Deb. So I want you to pull that up a little bit. But I'm going to ask the question that every mom out there is asking right now, because they heard you say you take 5 minutes and freeze. How do they do that with kids running around and cereal being spilled everywhere and laundry being thrown up to the fan and slung around? And I'm not speaking from experience at all, but
Well, when I say freeze, you freeze your reaction
mm,
before you respond. And it's okay. I've been that mom too. So, I had 3 children and had gone through this horrendous divorce and all kinds of things, was a single mom. So I know what that is like. But what I would do and what I've done is I will say, Mommy needs a timeout right now
mm,
because I'm going to have to discipline you, and I don't want to do it in anger. So I'm going to go to my room for 5 minutes. What that normally does is it shifts them too from whatever hyper vigilance that they're doing and crying and all of that. And it makes them think, it takes them to their prefrontal cortex, is like, what is mommy going to do when she comes back? What is happening right now? What, and so it gives you that chance to take some deep breaths. And then you go to that prefrontal cortex of your brain, and it will help you to reason, okay, they're acting out because they're hungry or they're whatever the reason is, and I can do this and I can systematically deal with this problem rather than just screaming and yelling, because all that does is it stimulates their amygdala and yours at the same time. So you've all got fire alarms going off in your brain. Nothing's going to change until that fire alarm is calmed down.
is
That
there
makes
a limit to how many timeouts you can take in a day?
as many as you need.
I love that you just said that, because that was something that, because I've been a single mom for several years, and when my kids were very little, I almost said it jokingly at first, but I would say I need a timeout, and they would be like, okay. And so I'd give myself a timeout because I could find myself being very reactive to them, just being children. They're not really doing anything children are not supposed to do, being rambunctious and playing and things like that. But for whatever reason, so I love that you said that, because I tell moms, especially young moms, all the time, like, it's okay to give yourself a timeout. It's okay to not immediately react to everything. And the other thing I say is that you are the one that's responsible for showing up as the kind of mom that you want to be. And part of that is understanding your reactions and taking a moment and pausing, because when you react, I think Lori and you talked about this, like when your kid gets hurt and you immediately react like with fear and
Right.
you freak out, the kid freaks out more. And so taking that moment to be like, okay, there's no blood, they're conscious, they
Right.
haven't knocked themselves out or anything, like that matters, because your kids learn from that also where to take risk and how to take risks, or at least that's what I saw in my children. If they were climbing up something at the playground or whatnot, if I acted afraid, they were afraid. But if I acted like, okay, just be careful, they still took the risk, but they were more careful about it. So it does matter. So I love that you said that, put it in that context.
It does matter because what you've just described perfectly, Carrie, is the mirror neuron response.
Hmm.
We have mirror neurons and we copy what we see.
Ah,
You know, and so when those neurons respond to what they're watching, then they will mimic that. It's like somebody that's on stage and people are clapping, and all of a sudden everybody's clapping, and even the person that they're clapping for starts clapping. That's that's mirror neurons firing off. Everybody's mimicking what they're watching.
wow. That's crazy.
That's why, they'll say, "Oh, look at that. She's dusting just like mommy does, and she's playing,
Mm,
and or if it's a little boy, oh, look at that. He's pretending his daddy and he's getting his tools and because those are mirror neurons. So kids witness, you're so, so, so right. Whatever they witness becomes what fires. And
mhm,
neurons, remember, whatever fires together wires together. So
mm,
what kids are doing is they're building neural networks in the brain. You
mm.
want them to copy, you want the good, you want them to wire well
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not into, fight, flight, or freeze mode. You want them to wire into, oh, calmness. That's the way you handle when there's an emergency.
Mhm,
So on that note, for the women who are listening, and I know these thoughts because I've had them, right? So for the women who are listening, so like before I met Deb, just for y'all to know, like I was healing from trauma and betrayal. I had compound trauma. I betrayal not only from my spouse, but in my business. We had, had somebody lose us almost $1 million. Like, I mean, it was crazy. So like I'm healing from all this stuff. Walking through, I'd almost lost my mom, like it was crazy. So I was having those reactions. My kids did not have good things to mirror during that point of my life, right? So
mhm,
for moms who are saying, well, I'm screwed, like I've already, done all this stuff, they didn't have anything good to mirror at all. How do we, again, we need to go back to taking the thoughts captive, right, for us, but at the same time, how do we help our children correct and us still not spaz out, because now they do have a mirroring response that was like ours, so they're going to be like, ah, right, because we were like, so how do we help our children adjust their responses outside of just adjusting ours?
That's really a good question because God wired our brains. It's called neuroplasticity. And God wired our brains so that they could rewire. And the only way your brain rewires is through repetition, doing the same things over and over again. So, unfortunately, you're going to have to practice in front of them and with them. Take what, okay, so if they're dysregulated at the time and they're throwing a fit, especially if they're a toddler, look, say, what is that on the floor? What's green over there? That'll immediately they'll stop and look because you've shifted their brain immediately to the prefrontal cortex. So you distract and then realign and say, now we can do this and this and this, and so that's one thing you can do. Another thing is just modeling again and again. No, we talk our problems out. We don't scream them out. So let's take a moment and breathe, and you can have them practice deep breathing. A lot of times, it's so funny. I had a client one time that told me, because I said, I want you to practice breathing and that will help to regulate you. And she goes, I've been breathing all my life and I'm still dysregulated. And I said, it's not that kind of breathing. So the breathing I'm talking about is very deep breathing. And what that does, and it works for children and adults, when you deep breathe, it presses on your intestines, because the vagus nerve goes from your brain stem and wraps around all of your intestines and your major organs. So when you breathe from your diaphragm deeply and hold it, and then breathe out slowly and coach them. Now let your shoulders drop, just relax and just breathe out 1, 2, 3 and count it for them. So that now their brain is totally in their prefrontal cortex and they're calming. And it's almost like a sedative. If you do like 5 or even 10 deep breaths, you'll feel like, oh, I could go lay down now. Because you have those, that dopamine and those neurotransmitter chemicals in your brain already. That just helps to engage it and press and release the tension. It's almost like the vagus nerve is like I call it the emergency brake. It kind of skids everything to a halt and helps you to shift your brain to the front and that to your CEO. And it works with children as just as well as it works with adult. But you have to practice it.
And I'm going to assume all of us just did that breathing as she was talking it through too, right?
I did.
I did.
Well, I volunteer with a group called Hope is Alive, and it's a group of addicted ladies. And I've dealt with women that have even been addicted to fentanyl. And I teach them these breathing techniques. And so when they are triggered to, I need, I need some fentanyl, and I teach them these techniques, they're always amazed. They go, oh my gosh, that works so quickly. And it's always there. You don't have to get a shot. You don't have to take a pill. It's in your brain already. It's just learning how to release it and calm yourself down.
One of the things that I think I'm hearing in what you're saying is in reference to Lori's question is that it's really never too late. So for the moms that, they've raised their kids and they had all this trauma and maybe they weren't aware of it. They didn't know that's what they were dealing with and everything. It's still not too late. From what I'm gathering you're saying is it's still not too late to model the new habit and try to help encourage that rewire of the brain and whatnot. Because I think for moms, we're all moms. So, for us, there's sometimes that we think back on things and think, man, I wish I would have handled that differently. Or, I wish that, I didn't react the way that I did or whatever the case may be. So I think for me, it's nice to hear that it's never too late to start implementing these things that you're telling us about and to move forward with that and create that new habit. It doesn't matter how old your kids are. If they're older, it might be a little bit more difficult for them to correct that, but you can still model it for them. So that's that's really hopeful, I think, for a lot of people that are maybe still dealing with their trauma.
Oh, it's definitely never too late. Most women that I have come to me with serious trauma from their childhood are in their 40s and 50s. Why is
Mm,
that? It's because now they're coming to the point in their lives where they're beginning to question, why am I responding this way? Why is this happening? So it's never, ever too late. And children are even more adaptable to rewiring the brain because their brain's still working on wiring to begin with. So
right.
it's you're really ahead of the game there
Mhm.
with younger children. So it's never ever too late. And I just want to address something you said, Carrie, and I would guess that you didn't even realize you said it. I wish I'd have done things differently. I
Mm,
didn't do things the right way. Instead of saying that, say, I did the best I knew at the time, but now I know
mm,
better and I'm improving. I am on that road of healing and improving my parenting and, any skill like that, because your brain hears you
mhm.
and it wants to take action. It wants to do what you're thinking where you're short at. So if you're saying I messed up, it goes to show you. It'll go into your file system and look at every time you've messed up and it'll put it right in front of your face.
It's funny that you point that out, Deb, because I do that with my kids. When they say, I'm just not good at that, I'll be like, no, you're still learning how to do that,
Yeah.
or you didn't do, you just got to try again, and when you're doing something for the first time. So it's funny that you pointed that out because I do that with my kids. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we need to learn to do it for ourselves too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Me too.
absolutely.
So let's use that and go back to the taking thoughts captive for a second, because Deb, I want you to hit a little bit back on, we've already talked about neuroplasticity and that a little bit, but I want you to hit a little bit on that because scripture tells us to take every thought captive, make it obedient to Christ, right? So there is a reason, like just like Paul says, renew your mind. There are reasons for this stuff in scripture, but I think most of the time we skip over it because we focus on the gospel, not necessarily on becoming more of who we were created to be in him and becoming more like the image of God that we're made in. So hit on that from a science aspect a little bit and correcting your thoughts, right? And taking those thoughts captive, making them obedient, and what that might look like in everyday life. Because I say everything you think, we have to stop for a second and say, no, no, no. I take that thought captive. I make it obedient to Christ. Holy Spirit, I need you to tell me the truth in that and walk me through this. Now, am I perfect at that? No, I don't do it all the time, but I think it matters. But I want to hear your view from a science aspect of why this matters.
Well, for one thing, it's the brain only rewires through repetition. So whatever you repeat over and over and over again is going to cause it to move into this. I don't know if you've ever heard of the default mode. It goes into default mode. And
Mhm.
unless you practice over and over again, and you want to build a new neural pathway by practicing whatever things are good, whatever things are true, whatever things are pure, whatever things are of good report. Like Paul said, think on these things. Well, that's neuroscience. That's
Mhm.
repeating to your brain over and over again the things that are truth. Because look, remember, again, our brains don't know the difference between truth and a lie. So
Mhm.
whatever you tell yourself, the brain goes, oh, okay, that's important to her. So that must be truth. And so I'm going to search and find out why that's true. Conversely, the same thing when you tell yourself, I'm going to think on love and how I'm loved and perfect love that casts out fear. I have nothing to fear because I am so loved. And you rest in that and you get that identity. Most of what we face is really, if you want to bottom line it, it's an identity crisis.
Mm.
We're trying to walk through lives with the wrong identity. And what I mean by that is what do you identify with? Most people identify with their past, with the mistakes they've made, with past trauma, and they let that become who they are. But that's not biblical, and it's not neuroscience. It's neither one. In God, you have a new identity. And that's why we're to put on the mind you mentioned earlier, the mind of Christ. It's a new mindset. It's a new way of thinking. It's a love that we can't even comprehend, but we can just rest in it and receive it. And so all of those things are creating within us a new neural pathway as we think on truth. And truth is biblical. He tells us, if you think about the Bible in itself, why 365 times it says not to fear, don't be afraid. He's constantly implanting hope and reassuring that I'm your front guard, I'm your rear guard, I'm your high tower, I'm your rock. Over and over again, he's speaking safety. So we have to keep speaking safety. I'm in a good place. I'm in a safe place. I'm loved. And all of those things begin to build new neural pathways that become your default mode. And that's the pathway you want to go. You want to build a new default mode so you don't go down that negative neural loop that keeps replaying your past mistakes or your past failures or your past trauma.
Awesome. Yes, that makes so much sense. And we're going to have a whole bunch of episodes with you because you have so much wisdom to share. And I think so many lives will be changed just by listening to some of the things that you have, because I know mine has been. And so I'm very grateful for you in my life, and I'm thankful that God connected us. So we will have more episodes with Dr. Deb, 100%. And so I hope that you guys tune in and listen, and please give your feedbacks. And I think a lot of times what I hear Deb saying in this is like, let's reframe our brains in a way that we're focusing on love, we're focusing on gratitude, we're focusing on the things of heaven and not the things around us every single day. And I'm not trying to be all preachy or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, not doing that affects who you are and how you lead and how you react in your everyday life. So, in the comments, go down, tell us more things that you want to hear from Dr. Deb. Please, we would love that. And then, tell us some things that you're thankful for. Start practicing that. Let's all do that in the comments. Like, I think that would be so cool if we just have, like, in the comments, everybody saying, oh, I'm so thankful for my kids, my husband, my this, I love this, I love that about life, whatever. So let's bombard the comments with that. I think that would be amazing to do. Yeah.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you all so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Join us next week when we talk with Dr. Deb about her new book. You won't want to miss it. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a new episode.